What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Claudia Bellafato, and not Mike Golic Sr. No, it is in fact our good buddy Jason Fitz. We got a great show for you guys today. We will explain why Fitz is here, but as always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Fun one coming up today from a busy Memorial Day weekend, and we hope everyone had a safe, enjoyable weekend celebrating their loved ones, obviously celebrating and taking some time to remember those that gave the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedom in this country. And we hope you spend not only a minute this weekend, but every day thinking about and remembering those people that made that sacrifice and gave us the ability to enjoy a long weekend with family and friends here. So excited to hear about what everyone had going on. But Claudia, why don't you tell everybody what we got coming up for the rest of the show too?
Echo all of those words. I also have to say I'm excited for this show because we're already arguing about the Celtics off camera, so it's going to be a good one. We'll get to that, of course, the sweep that was and the sweep that may be. Lukai for the win and Kyrie looking to close out Minnesota tonight. Another dynamic duo. Kavanaugh brothers bring another title to South Bend, and one of us were at the game. Wilder Tuesday, Charlotte Wilder joins us in hour 2, and it wasn't me and it wasn't Fitz, and GoJo, you're not home, so I think that's enough clues for the folks to know. But tell us, how was the weekend in the game?
Yes, it was a great time. So I am currently in Philadelphia, as you mentioned, watching the Notre Dame men's lacrosse program go back-to-back as national championships, the first 2 national championships in program history, both just coming a year apart. Watching the most dominant force in college lacrosse and having it be my team is one of the greatest joys of my lifetime here. It was awesome. I survived a little weather here, which you guys are unfortunately going to have to hear plenty about this whole ordeal. We've got me out here, and then we've got my father right now who's in the middle of making his move. My parents spent half the year in Scottsdale, Arizona, and then half the year back living in South Bend, Indiana. And because they've got 3 dogs that they love more than I think their own children at this point and will cater to their needs no matter what, they make sure they drive them there instead of having to take them on a plane anywhere. And so my dad is now somewhere, I think, in the middle of Oklahoma with my mom listening to the show right here, which is why I'm calling the big guns here. Yahoo Sports' very own Jason Fitz. You can catch him doing any number of great things content-wise over there at Jason Fitz on Twitter as well. Joining us now here. So Fitz, thanks for pitch hitting right now. Where is my dad on the list of people that you would want to do a road trip with?
Near the top. Like, here, let's be very clear. You're near the bottom. He's near the top. And I understand why the dogs get a better seat. Like, Mike's not. See, this is the thing. I've driven with Mike before. Mike's idea of like going on a friendly drive through California is crank the music up, don't say anything, and just like he's all over there, like he's going through like a demon, right? Mike Sr. is going to sit there. He's going to talk to you a little bit. You're going to get a good story out of it. And he's going to tell you the story in an interesting way. Like, I feel like everything about road trips feel good. And I understand why those dogs get pampered more. They deserve it. Those dogs have not worn out your parents the way you and your siblings have. Like, I feel for your parents being on a road trip with the kids, not with the dogs. The dogs are delightful and deserve all of that.
Damn.
All right, so this is interesting. Claudia, Jason's actually been on a couple of car rides with us back in the day when we had to do some remote stuff at ESPN. So he's experienced a little bit of this. You've only been with us here on the show. You've only known us in this context. So based on what you've seen working with us, who would you rather be on a road trip with, me or my dad?
Are you really going to make me pick that? I feel like that's so wrong.
Yes, I am.
I would say both of you. Can I not do that?
No, you cannot do that. You coward.
I'm a music girl, though. Like, I like that too, GoJo. I like to just blast the tunes, windows down. You don't have to talk to the person you're with, but I also feel like Senior has some good stories. Only because he's older than you, GoJo. That's all. So it really depends on the vibe and where we're driving to. Right. I guess.
That's a great point. What I will say, and the thing I think you guys are both discounting, given my propensity for being fat, is the road trip snacks. Ooh. I think I am an A+ purveyor of road trip snacks, which is a huge part of it. Being able to go into any number of rest stops or gas stations alongside the highway and find and secure the best snacks is an art form, and one that I have perfected over the years, clearly. So while you guys are discounting that, the rest of that's true. You're just going to have to hear my dad sing Brandy at the top of his lungs and Take It Easy by the Eagles multiple times throughout the trip. And I don't know if that's something you guys want or have prepared for mentally.
A couple of things here, Mike. Number one, at least your dad's going to have variety and range in the music he listens to. You're just going to give me the same. I'm going to say there. While you say all the that's going to be the whole time.
It's going to be Taylor Swift. Grow up.
You are catching strays out here, GoJo.
I will say though, as I say that out loud, Mike and I did have a hell of a 4th of July one year singing "The Greatest Showman" at the top of our lungs. I will give Mike a little credit for that.
Okay, but maybe senior's car. Maybe I'm out. I'm out.
Wait, number 2 year, Mike. I have watched you eat a large steak in 2 bites. I don't want to listen to what you do to a bag of corn nuts, man. You're just and then all of a sudden, bam! I got to hear that. You're gonna get snacks, but ain't no way my hand's getting any of them. I'm out of luck on that whole thing. I'm gonna be digging into the corner, hoping to get a tiny Skittle that's left over from the eat machine.
And the moans and the eye rolls.
By the way, there's so many moans. God, Claudia, there's so many moans. But speaking of future moans coming up, I've just received word from the correspondents in my mom and dad's RV that in about 100 miles, they're going to be stopping at a Buc-ee's in Texas. And I don't know when the last time they've been to a Buc-ee's is, if either of them or both of them have been there before. And so we'll be looking for, I think, my father's road gas station review as him and my mom head to Buc-ee's there. So we'll get an update on that as they go along here. Again, thankfully, my mom is texting while my dad is driving, so everybody's being safe. We'll get the update on their road trip there. I will obviously spend an entire segment waxing poetic on this Notre Dame lacrosse team. Again, being out here in Philadelphia with years worth of alumni, the lacrosse parents, and obviously getting back-to-back years in this stadium to watch one of the teams that I love take down the championship. And this year, in one of the more dominant fashions I have ever seen on this stage, we will certainly get to that. But Claudia mentioned it, and I do not want to get too long without this. The Boston Celtics last night close out the series against the Indiana Pacers. They sweep in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-0, and it just still seems like we cannot come to a consensus on what we actually think about this team. We know they're very good, and for a team where Jaylen Brown ends up as the MVP for the Eastern Conference Finals and goes through and finishes off yet another game where they had to come back in the fourth quarter. During this series sweep, the Pacers had at least a 90% win probability in the fourth quarter 3 different times, according to ESPN Stats and Info. They were up 117-114 with 9 seconds left in Game 1. They were up 109-101 with 2:25 left in Game 3. And then last night with 5:40 left, they were up 98-90 and then proceeded to not score, the Indiana Pacers, for the final 3 minutes and 30 seconds of that game. Fitz, it was the second game where Tyrese Halliburton was not able to suit up for the Indiana Pacers as well. And so now that the Boston Celtics are going back, this is Jason Tatum's second trip to the NBA Finals. They've obviously lived in the Eastern Conference Finals, but looking at the road that they took to get here, Fitz, how much credit at this point are you willing to not give the Boston Celtics for this run?
I'm giving the Celtics all the credit. Look, I understand that we're going to say the East is trash. I get that. And I understand we're going to say they've taken on shorthanded teams all the way across the playoff run. Fine. Those are all true facts. But what the hell is the point of all of this if we can't at least enjoy the run while it's happening? My thing is the Celtics are simply not losing. Yeah, it doesn't really matter who their opponents are. The only argument everybody is giving me about why the Celtics are going to fall apart is because, air quotes, they always do. I don't care about the past. The past of this organization or these players from last year has nothing to do with this year's playoff run. But Celtics fans are so busy preparing themselves for what they expect in this year's playoff that I don't think they're even enjoying this run. What is the point of sitting through the regular season, sitting through the playoffs, if the whole time you're just, woe is me, we're going to lose when we get to the final. Get there. You're in the NBA Finals, for God's sake, and you can't even enjoy it because you're convinced your franchise is just falling apart. Why? I don't get it at all.
Because Tatum and Brown have played 102 playoff games together, and that is the 5th most of any tandem that has not won a title. That's why I don't think it's so much woe is me, and I can say this because I am a Celtics fan. But it's watching facing the Heat without Jimmy Butler, even giving them a game. Every single one of these series should have been a sweep. Donovan Mitchell gets hurt towards the end, but Jarrett Allen wasn't there. And now Tyrese Halliburton, you let this Pacers squad almost beat you 3 times. GoJo just read the stats. Game 2 was really the only one with that big margin. So I don't think it's so much as woe is me, but it's I understand that heading into this final, I don't want the expectations to be too high because then I'll be depressed. So if it's right here, we win, party, let's go. We lose, okay, it's just another year of that.
What the hell is wrong with our sports society that if you dominate, we're like, oh, you know what? They haven't been tested. That's the problem. Then you survive close games and it's like, oh, but they're not dominating. And frankly, I don't give a damn about how many games they played together. Imagine if Twitter and 24-hour coverage existed when the Bulls were struggling to beat the Pistons. They would have ripped the entire thing apart because MJ can't figure out how to get through the Detroit Pistons. Like, that wasn't real. It took a minute. Sometimes you just don't win. Sometimes I can't believe it. I can't believe that shot went off the side of the rim and then goes in. Sometimes you're Kawhi and you have a magical run that takes you to a championship. Some years you just don't win, even though you're the best team. That's the magic of sports. But bracing yourself for defeat while you're in fact winning 3 straight playoff series, like, you want to know what sucks? Losing. You know what want to know what's really terrible? Watching your favorite team be bad every year. But getting to the playoffs and then winning series after series and then having your own fans assign a yeah but to it is the stupid. I can't. What do you watch for if you can't even enjoy the victories that get you to the NBA Finals?
See, this is what we've stumbled on, is the psyche of a fan who roots for a perennial loser in the Las Vegas Raiders, who are Jason Fitz's favorite team on planet Earth. And Claudia, who has come up in the generation of Boston fans with the sign kid that everybody hates, who have had more championship parades than anybody knows what to do with. And so you're right, Fitz. Part of what we see with a Celtics team that I said seems largely joyless during this run is because they probably do hear their fan base as they go and gentleman sweep, actual sweep. Like, they took all of these teams that were missing their stars and did dispatch them promptly, like swiftly, to the point where now we're bracing for impact in the gap between the conference finals and the NBA finals. Like, we might have to go 10 days without NBA basketball because both of these teams so thoroughly whooped the opponent's ass in the conference finals that we're now going to have this massive gap between the two in the bit of the action. So that's where we're at overall in the level of dominance that we've seen from a team that, oh, by the way, does not have Kristaps Porzingis still. There was the thought that he might come back for Game 4, get a game under his belt before going into the finals, but now you've got that 10-day period to rest one of the most important players to any franchise that we've seen this season in the NBA. And so, Jason, I can see what you're saying. It is somewhat maddening, and I couldn't imagine being a player on that team, knowing how hard winning is in this league, and knowing that every championship road, for the most part, we can even look in recent history at the Lakers bubble championship, at Giannis and the Bucks championship the year after in a season that came after an abbreviated offseason, and look at ways where their run might not have held up to some mythical standard that we've all got in our heads that every champion before has gone through, and it might not look the same. It's absolutely a weaker path, but at the same time, this team weathered injury to one of their star players and has managed to keep everyone else healthy and has an incredible amount of depth that this franchise and front office deserve credit for building up over time. It just so happens, Claudia, that you guys have a different standard in that city. And so you all view this through a different way than most other people who, if you had handed them the keys to a Celtics team that had 2 young superstars, that was perennial Eastern Conference contenders, and once again knocking on the door of an NBA championship in a city that had been starved for that, the way that we consume and digest this team is entirely different.
And let me be clear, there's, analyst hat Claudia and fan Claudia. Yes, I'm trying not to raise my expectations too high because that's what I grew up with, literally. And I'm not saying this like all I knew was winning, but Tom Brady was my quarterback. Like I watched the Patriots never expecting them to lose, and the accolades of the Celtics and the Bruins as well. Bruins had a historic season. They go into the playoffs. You see what happened. You saw what happened this season as well. So that's the fan in me, but the analyst, of course, I know. Basketball's not easy. They shouldn't have swept. The fact that they got the 2 gentlemen and the sweep the last time out, I give them all the credit. I really do. It's just, I think as a fan, you look at these series and how easy it was for not having those stars to go up against, and the fact that they did blow leads and they did have to come back from being down double digits against a Pacers squad that didn't have Tyrese Halliburton, down 18 in that Game 3. Scenarios like that saying, okay, we're about to go up against Kyrie possibly and Luka, a team that's not gonna, let you just take your foot off the gas, because they will beat you. That, I think, is the way that the Celtics fans are looking at this moving forward, not necessarily looking back saying, well, they should have done better. It's just like, okay, I'm ready for pain because it may be coming, Fitz.
Yeah, look, I understand all of that. And Mike is right. Like, I'm the first to admit that there was this run in the early 2000s where my beloved Raiders kept losing weirdly in the playoffs. They lost the Tuck Rule game. They lost the Syracuse knocked a Gannon game out. Like, there were three straight years where they lost weirdly in the playoffs. I remember looking at one of my buddies and saying, man, I'd rather not even make the playoffs than keep getting my heart broken this way. And then I watched my favorite team lose double-digit games in an NFL season for 13 consecutive years. And when you go through that, you're like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to appreciate the playoffs. And I think what's interesting is I understand the why of this. I'm not stupid, contrary to popular belief. But I do think it's interesting how we shift the goalpost constantly. Like, the conversation this entire offseason, no matter what happens from now on, will be how good Indiana is set up to be and how much hope their fans should have. The conversation around the Timberwolves, no matter what, is we tried to make Anthony Edwards the next Michael Jordan before he'd even gotten to a conference final. Like, we are in this spot where we are desperate to prove that these up-and-coming teams are great, but it feels like we're equally desperate at times to take the teams that are there and just rip them apart constantly. Like, this Celtics team was the best team in the NBA from the beginning of the season to where we sit right now. And the reason people don't have faith is because it hasn't happened in the past. But last year's playoff run was not the same as this year's playoff run. The final opponent is going to be different than last year's final opponent was. So all this talk about last season or the past with this duo doesn't really matter to me, because the vacuum they're in right now is this particular moment. And there's no reason in my mind the Celtics can't win the championship.
Well, we're doing all this to the Celtics because, to Claudia's point about the number of playoff games, this duo in particular, this core that we've gotten to know for a while has already played, we're bored with them. We feel like we've got a ceiling on them because if they were to win now, it would be by far the most games amongst a duo before they won an NBA championship. I think right now, it was Dirk Nowitzki and somebody whose name I'm blanking on in the Dallas Mavericks from when they won. It was something like 83 games that they had played together. So you're talking about 20 more playoff games, almost an entire playoff. Jason Terry, that's right. Jason Terry and Dirk Nowitzki had played, I think, 82 or 83 playoff games before they got to their championship. So we're talking 20 more games before we got to that point of a team and a group that's core has been together. And Fitz, you and I at ESPN had debates about should we break up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as a core. And now we're watching Jaylen Brown maybe finally get more of the respect that he feels certainly like he deserves. But then a lot of people who have watched them in clutch moments and seen, hey, Jason Tatum crunch time numbers not so great. Jaylen Brown sometimes more of the propensity to take over in these games. We already feel like we've written the book on them. And I think the point that you brought up there that's going to be most apt when we talk about the Dallas Mavericks and what's going on with the Minnesota Timberwolves. What we're looking for with this next generation of young stars is how long this process sometimes take and how much we take that for granted because of the stars that we've had in the past. Like, we're looking, Anthony Edwards is 22 years old. You're right. Expecting him to be ready to probably lead this team in a Western Conference Finals was a little bit too much. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, these guys are now just getting to the age where NBA players tend to give us their best stuff in these big moments, especially this late in the season. And now once some of the all-time greats that have skewed our perception of how easy this is, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, are no longer in the picture.
Imagine what it's going to be. I'm going to give Claudia like a dream come true here. Let's just imagine the Celtics go into the NBA Finals gentleman's sweep. You know what Boston fans are going to start screaming then? Why isn't this championship run getting more credit? Like, that's immediately. They win a championship. 100%. It's going to be, this is an all-time run. Why aren't you giving us the love we deserve? They should be talking about this as one of the all-time greats. You guys always hate on Boston. Like, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't when it comes to the Celtics and their fans.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I will not deny that. You're right. Absolutely. I'll be the first one.
Yeah, no. You know what? We love a self-aware fan, at least, and I'd imagine a somewhat self-aware fan base by the most part, but they are going to get tested. There is no doubt coming up, and it is not by the team that we all expected coming into the conversations around the Western Conference Finals. So coming up next, how worried should Boston Celtics fans be about what we've seen from one of the best backcourts in the NBA right now, or according to one analyst, maybe one of the best backcourts we've ever seen? Next.
GoJo and Golic, we had a sweep in the East. Now, how about the West? Possibly another sweep by the Dallas Mavs. Minnesota after a hot run. Now just a game away from being eliminated. And Luke and Kyrie have looked unstoppable. Anthony Edwards, who Fitz said we were comparing to MJ, is now saying, apparently in the locker room, he was heard saying, I still don't feel like they can beat us, bro. We haven't all been clicking at one time. And unfortunately, it has to click tonight or they're out. That was according to the Athletic Sam Amick. He said that Edwards was saying that to Mike Conley. This brings us to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything DraftKings has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Dallas opened the 3-point favorite. We're seeing some movement down to 1.5, 2 at DraftKings. You can get plus 110 on the money line for Minnesota. So with that, I ask you, are we cashing or trashing, Fitzy, a win for Dallas or Minnesota? And we'll go with the plus money here. Would you bet Minnesota at plus money tonight?
I feel like, look, this series has been tight enough. Minnesota's going to get one, right? Like these games and watching the way they've ended, they have been in a situation where this series could look wildly different were it not for the ice in Luka's veins and a couple of great moments from the Mavs, not taking anything away from that. But it feels like it gets Minnesota a win. I cashed it. Minnesota can get a win out of this series, but Dallas is clearly the better team. Like the method seems to be Dallas in their depth can keep you close all the way until the fourth quarter when their two superstars just simply are dominating and they can't be stopped, Mike. So for me, I like Minnesota to be able to get a win. It doesn't mean that it changes the way the series is going to play out, but one win is cute and it's good for the TV money for the TV partners.
Yeah, Fitz, to your point about Dallas down the stretch in games, had the league's second best record in clutch time this season, 23-9 during the regular season, and the best clutch offense, 127.1 points per 100 possessions during the regular season too. So clutch time is, I think, within 5 points in the final 5 minutes of the game. So they've been great when the moment's been tight here. You're absolutely right, and that's been a huge difference maker in this series. The biggest question I have in this game tonight is, what does the Dallas Mavericks offense look like with no Derek Lively? Because it sounds like he's doubtful for this game, still took that knee to the back of the head in game 3 and ultimately left there. And you saw, while we've talked about him and Gafford in the same breath because of what they've been as rim running bigs for them and guys that have been that interior presence, Lively is the more offensively inclined of the two, and we saw that talked about during the game. And so if he's doubtful and doesn't play tonight, I do wonder if that has any effect in a series where, man, it just feels like if you get any production in a meaningful moment from Karl Anthony Towns, you might have a shot. Because what we're going to focus on Anthony Edwards, because some people got hung up on the Jordan comparison and wanted to make that something that I think it wasn't. the real ire seems to be going, and I think deservedly, in the direction of Karl Anthony Towns, who's in the middle of an historically bad shooting performance from beyond the arc, where he's decided to try and make his hay. And Fitz, I don't know where you stand on this. You hear Shaq and Charles Barkley all the time barking at him to get back down to the paint because that's what they did, and that's how they think you've got to make a living as a big man, even if it's changed some in this league. But no matter how you think he's gone about it, Karl Anthony Towns has not lived up to it in this series. And so just to try and help our producer Bailey out, I'll say I'm going to trash this and I'm going to pick Dallas to finish off the sweep here because I made the mistake of going and riding the bring your ass wave and picking the Mavericks at the beginning of this series despite my best interest. So Claudia, you've had to see us live through all of this and understand what I've been through on this front trying to support this Timberwolves team that was a really good vibe for a while until their bigs decided to unfortunately pull the same disappearing act we've been used to.
Yeah, I think my issue was the hype around this Minnesota team, but also the fact that they had two things that they were the best at in the regular and postseason, and one of them was defense, which wins championships, and the other was they're attacking at the rim and the defending of the paint. For some reason, they lost all of that up against the Mavs team that was one of the worst at rebounding and that didn't necessarily attack the paint super consistently. And now they're putting up 60-plus points in the paint, and they're out-rebounding Minnesota, and they're actually playing some sort of defense. So all of the things I thought about Minnesota, the reason I thought Minnesota would get through, they have not shown. So for me, I always love a little bit of plus money. I'll probably live bet this game. That's how I've been betting all of these series because you can find plus money really on both sides. It's a game of runs, and we've seen that with both series in the East and the West. So I'm not answering the question. I'm not going to cash it or trash it because I'm going to live bet this game. But it is interesting to see how Minnesota has sort of just moved away from their game plan, and I don't know if that speaks more to them and their inexperience in the postseason, or maybe should we just give the Mavs a little bit more credit? GoJo.
Yeah, this Mavs team absolutely deserves some credit. I do think it is interesting, though, that we talked about the Boston Celtics run through this postseason, and especially in this last series, have mentioned the fact that they were down in so many of these fourth quarters. The Dallas Mavericks, also in a similar vein, according to ESPN Stats and Info, the first team to take a 3-0 series lead despite trailing in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter of every game in the play-by-play era. So it has been a Western Conference Finals that is bordering on two sweeps for both teams that have been incredibly close competitive games. Dallas obviously set a strong tone by going on the road in the first two and shocking this Timberwolves team, and now has the chance to close it out at home because of it. But it's by no means been an easy stretch, even at a time where until game 3, we felt like we hadn't gotten anywhere close to the best of Anthony Edwards, who said himself, hey, I got to get back towards the basket more, do the things that have helped this team out. And again, you know, we've heard Bomani Jones on those TNT sidecasts, 14 feet of disappointment with the two Minnesota bigs. But Claudia, Karl Anthony Towns, this is the franchise that he came into as a top pick. He's the one that's been here for the longest of this group that's now introduced Rudy Gobert, that's drafted Anthony Edwards, and he is the one that is absolutely letting them down right now, and there's no way to sugarcoat that. On the other side, Stan Van Gundy, who has been awesome to listen to during this postseason run, talked about Kyrie and Luka Doncic in this backcourt and said that they might be one of the greatest or the greatest backcourt, most talented in NBA history. So, Fitz, when you hear something like that, watching a guy in Luka Doncic who I think people are developing an even bigger appreciation for in this postseason, not only for his skill, but the snarl that he plays with. I can't imagine a more infuriating player to play against. I'll just say that right now, because everything he does with the intent to embarrass you, and he does it with that smirk on his face, and he does it complaining to the officials. And alongside Kyrie in that backboard, who has now actually somewhat become the silent partner in all this. We don't hear any more conspiracy theories from a guy that's just gotten playing back to good basketball. So where do you see them, Jason, as one of these all-time backcourts that Stan Van Gundy's talking about?
Look, I think for this moment, it's incredible, and maybe it's one of the all-time greats, but I think what's interesting is what you just mentioned. Like, a month ago, people were kind of, is Luka, did Luka not become the star we want him to? And people hated the chirping. And a month ago, nobody seemed to want to find anything good to say about Kyrie. It's amazing how going on a nice little run here, all of a sudden people are like, well, you know, Kyrie's been kind of quiet, and look at Luka, it's killer instinct, definitely works for him. Like, this all comes back to the fact that they're winning. And I think that's why Kyrie made it clear that it doesn't really matter if they're one of the greatest without the ring. But that also comes back to what I said as we started the show. Like, Should the ring matter? Do you have to have a championship to be one of the greatest duos of all time? What they're doing right now is so unstoppable. And you mentioned the clutch time moments, but like the way that Luka and Kyrie are playing together, I think is a shock to most of us and something that most of us didn't see coming, because the world was not clamoring for this, Mike, a year ago, saying this is going to work, this is going to be great. But so far it has. So kudos to the Mavs for seeing what the rest of us didn't.
I'll say this, Fitz, the clutch time obsession that we all have, and talking about how great the Mavs have been in this respect. And on the other side, in the series that we think we're going to get in the finals, of how poor Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics have been in particular in certain clutch time elements, specifically his numbers. What that all goes back to as we grade these superstars on a different curve than everybody else is the simplest way that I've thought about how to gauge what a superstar player is supposed to do and why this stuff matters is, are you someone that consistently in the toughest moments makes life easier on your lesser talented teammates, on your lesser gifted teammates? As a guy that was an other on every roster I was a part of, you look to those other guys to be able to get wins in those moments to make your life easier. And we have watched Luka and Kyrie consistently do that throughout this postseason run. And I think some of the frustration, conversely, with a guy like Jason Tatum, when we've watched Jaylen Brown take over, or someone else, Derek Lively, Drew Holiday, has been, hey, you got all this talent. You're supposed to be the one opening up for them. And in some ways he does. And in some ways we're still waiting to see the best version of that as we march towards what seems like a likely Celtics and Dallas Mavericks NBA Finals. All right, at GoJo Golic on Twitter, we've been asking this morning, who would you rather go on a road trip between me or my father? We can open that up to at GoJo Golic. Who in the world of sports would you like to most go on a road trip with? Can be any athlete, current or former, that you'd want. My parents are in the middle of their drive from Arizona to South Bend. They're about 100 miles now out of, or I guess inside of that, of getting to a Buc-ee's in Texas. My mom has never been to Buc-ee's. My dad has been to Buc-ee's. If you are unfamiliar, aka a person somewhere in the northern half of the United States, Buc-ee's is a pantheon, a beacon in the night in the world of gas station rest stops. They have created a small slice of Valhalla that includes a place where you can buy beef brisket sandwiches, an entire deli counter, but for beef jerky, a whole set of merchandise. Claudia Bellafato, our analyst here at DraftKings, has you have Buc-ee's merch and have never been to Buc-ee's. That's how incredible the brand is.
Well, I didn't know what the hell it was. My boyfriend got us matching sweatshirts, which was cute. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God, that's so cute. What is it? He was like, it's a gas station. I said, okay, thank you. That's so cute. And then I realized it was, as you just so eloquently said, a phenomenon, I guess. But it is a gas station, right?
It's a gas station that's got it's got a mascot. I was in that gas. It's more of a rest stop than a gas station because they've got like stuff that you can buy. Like you can buy Christmas lawn inflatables in there. They've got a whole section of clothing that you can buy, not just the clear Buc-ee's merch there. You've got an actual gas station grocery store on the inside of this, and the Buc-ee's mascot just walking around in the middle there. I saw a kid walk into the store and have their eyes light up with joy the minute they saw Buc-ee the Beaver mascot and run up to him and give him a big old hug. So, Jason, it is a little bit of an elevated experience.
Yeah, no, it's think about who it's for, right? Like you think about truckers and like spending most of my life on a tour bus. Like if you went into a great rest stop, like his fueling takes a long time in a truck. That's what everybody forgets. Like when you're fueling up a big rig, it takes a long time. So when the bus or the truck stops, you can get off and like stretch your legs and sort of have some level of human interaction. So you get into some of these truck stops in the middle of the night. If it's beautiful and the bathrooms are clean, like especially like, come on, you got 12 guys on a tour bus. We all know you can't number 2 on a tour bus. So like all of a sudden you pull into a truck stop. If you've got 5 buses on this tour, you got 60 people fighting for a bathroom right there, right? Like, so you go running into the bathrooms are nice. They have all sorts of accoutrements to keep you like mentally occupied while you're walking around. There's great food. It's an experience. It's like a shopping mall meets a truck stop.
I have to say, it's like my favorite sweatshirt. Super comfortable. So I'm a fan, and hopefully I'll make it there someday.
All right. Well, you know what?
Goals.
We hope that for you too. In the meantime, you will get to live this journey through my mother's eyes, her first time. And I was wrong. It is a Buc-ee's in Missouri. So I don't want stolen valor for any of the Texas brand Buc-ee's, but they're going to be up to date on this one here. So as we go along this morning and have some fun with the road trip conversation, Claudia, we got some really terrible news yesterday in the world of sports from someone that I can say comfortably would have been a joy to go on any sort of trip with at any time here. The great Bill Walton, one of the legends in the sport of basketball, legends in the field of broadcasting here, unfortunately passing away at the age of 71.
Yeah, prolonged battle with cancer. From the outside, I never met him, but it's been so interesting to hear all of the stories of people who knew and lived with Bill Walton. And here's a statement from Adam Silver. He said, what I remember the most about him was his zest for life. He was a regular presence at league events, always upbeat, smiling ear to ear, and looking to share his wisdom and warmth. I treasured our close friendship, envied his boundless energy, and admired the time he took with every person he encountered. As a cherished member of the NBA family for 50 years, Bill will be deeply missed by all those who came to know and love him. And GoJo, I know your dad had a sweet message about him on X. I'm curious if either of you have any stories, but all I know is when I listened to him on Color and talk about games, he really embodied that word, color. He was just so interesting, so funny, always doing something out of left field. Of course, a Hall of Famer and basketball legend himself. So, yeah, it is a tough loss, cancer, man. It's a shitty thing.
It is terrible, and I think when you try and sum up Bill Walton, it's almost impossible because, to Claudia's point, he was so many things at once. I saw somebody describe it as one of the rare instances of a person who, being an all-time great center in the world of basketball, felt like the side quest for Bill Walton. It felt like by no means what he was put on this earth to do, but it was something he took great joy in doing. One of the all-time great college basketball players we've ever seen as part of a dominant UCLA run that saw him win multiple College Players of the Year. One of just 7 players all time to win College Player of the Year and MVP in the NBA, along with 6th Man of the Year that he won during his time with the Boston Celtics. He was a force of nature whose body just unfortunately betrayed him on the basketball court before he could maybe even reach greater heights of the power there for a guy that was so lionized. But Jason, for you and I think for especially people of my age who have known Bill so much for his work as a broadcaster, obviously his work calling college basketball alongside Dave Pasch, who I saw talk really eloquently about him on SportsCenter. He was so firmly himself in every situation. And I think for a generation of broadcasters that have come up being more comfortable with that idea and seeing that become more the norm, it was because people like Bill were so comfortable doing that before so many other people were, and in ways that most other people never would have had the courage to do the things that he did on air. Rare is it that when the caricature or the impression that someone like Frank Caliendo does of you somehow falls short of how overwhelming and personable the guy he's impersonating is. So Bill Walton was a true one of one, and someone who I always enjoyed getting a chance to listen to watch whatever he was calling, and will dearly, dearly be missed in the space.
I think to that end, Mike, he's a pioneer for authenticity that influenced a generation, because you think growing up that it has to be done. Any of these jobs have to be done a certain way. And one of the big changes in media and broadcasting over the course of the last 15 years is you see people more comfortable being themselves. And so much of that came from, I think if you're my age and you grew up watching Bill Walton, you realize that you could be in a tie-dye shirt and say funny things. And as long as you did your job really well, you could be yourself while you did it. And I've always said that the true greats in this business and in entertainment in general are the type of people that when you watch them, you think, man, if I ran into that guy, I would want to hang out with him. I feel like I know who he is. And he was willing and able to give so much of who he authentically seemed to be in the way he approached his job while still doing his job at the highest possible level. You'd laugh and you'd learn something. And that we see so much of that influence in today's media and the way it's covered. I think so much of that comes from Bill Walton. Like you watch somebody do it different and do it different in a way that was so natural that you could look at it and say, hey, I'm different and I want to do this job too. Here's my path. Like none of us will be Bill Walton, but he certainly helped carve the path for so many of us that do this today.
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do is make a space comfortable for other people. And for Bill Walton, who had the accolades of an all-time great, who could walk into this situation and do so much of this because he carried the weight of this reputation as a player behind him, he created space for other people to do that. He set the table for those that were going to come after him. And that was his goal all the way along. When you hear those closest to him talk about how welcoming he was to different people that came to his world, you can see that that was something that mattered to him. Sports were important to him, but they weren't so self-serious that we needed to treat it like life and death. He saw the joy in so much of that, especially, and obviously, and many people have pointed out, in the conference that he called home as a college player and waxed poetically about so long, the Conference of Champions, the Pac-12 that is no longer with us. And as many have pointed out, Bill Walton will not have to see a world without the conference that mattered so much to him and so many close to him over the years. Again, spending time as a UCLA great, you saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of his UCLA brethren, with a very poignant message about him alongside Magic Johnson and so many others. The people that come out of the woodwork, I saw Danny Ainge on SportsCenter talking about how him and Larry Bird and these other guys grew up idolizing Bill Walton, some of these other titans of the industry that looked to this man as the one that they wanted to embody, the one that they wanted to try and emulate. And as you said, Fitz, nobody else will be able to emulate or pull off what the great Bill Walton did. He is a true one of one, and he is someone that's going to be sadly missed. Again, Bill Walton, the all-time great basketball player, broadcaster, and friend to so many, passing away after a battle with cancer at the age of 71.
back here on GoJo and Golic, and Notre Dame men's lacrosse was back in the championship, and they won again, so that makes back-to-back titles for them. A 15-5 win over Maryland, second straight. Only 2 titles in the program's history, and they came over the last 2 years, so back-to-back championships. Chris Kavanaugh named the most outstanding player thanks to scoring 3 straight in the second quarter, a hat trick in a span of 6 minutes. GoJo, I have to imagine the crowd was going crazy for that.
It was one of the coolest environments I've ever been a part of, Claudia, here. And I was in part of last year's environment, which was so different and so unique, Fitz, because we talked about this morning the different vantage points that different franchises and programs have, right? Of where you've come from informing how you enjoy success as a team. And for Notre Dame men's lacrosse, the entirety of this program's existence, where head coach Kevin Corrigan, who's been at this school for 36 years, has seen them go from an upstart team to one that was making Final Fours consistently, that during my time at Notre Dame was making it 2 national championships, but always falling short, always the bridesmaid and never the bride. Last year was catharsis. Last year was 3 or 4 decades of Notre Dame lacrosse alumni in tears in the parking lot because of a day they weren't sure was ever going to come, ushered in by this current team, led by Pat and Chris Kavanaugh, led by Liam Entenmann in goal. This year felt like the stamp of the securing of blue blood status in this sport, where now they have finally matched the achievement with what they thought they were capable of for so long. So very different environment and energy yesterday. Obviously, you had 2-hour rain delay to start things off, and Fitz, Maryland gets out to a couple of goal lead very early in this game before Notre Dame comes back in. And once they took a 5-3 lead, really never looked back in a game where Maryland only managed to score 5 goals. Notre Dame wins by a margin of 10, which is the same margin they won and beat Duke by in the ACC championship game this year. This is one of the most dominant college lacrosse teams of all time, Fitz, and they beat everybody that was put in front of their path. 15-1 on the season, and avenging their only loss from back in February against Georgetown in the quarterfinal on this run. So incredible environment in that stadium, an incredibly dominant team, one of the best Notre Dame teams, regardless of sport, that I have seen in my lifetime as a fan of this institution. It was unreal.
So many questions. Let's start with the first one. The next time Notre Dame makes the college football playoff, could we just have the lacrosse team step in and play for them so that maybe they learn how to win a championship? That's just throw a little championship shade at you.
Funny you mentioned that. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame head football coach, has been here for the last 2 championships. He spent a lot of time with a bunch of the coaches on campus, including Kevin Corrigan, who, as you look around campus now, with Micah Shrewsbury, the new men's basketball coach, Neil Ivey, who took over from Muffet McGraw a few years ago as the women's coach, and Marcus Freeman, there's a lot of new coaching on campus and a lot of younger coaches. Kevin Corrigan's become one of the elder statesmen, and so Marcus has gone to him for a bunch of advice, but also become a fan of the sports in large part because he's got a bunch of his players over here. You've got Mick Asaf, who has played on the football team, Sam, his brother Mick had also played on the football team there. You've got him. You've got the former Notre Dame quarterback, Tyler Buckner, by way of Alabama, who also made his way back onto this team as a short stick defensive midi. And then Jordan Faison, Notre Dame wide receiver from this year, who came to Notre Dame as a college lacrosse player on scholarship, was so good walking onto the football team that because of the rules around scholarship limits in that sport, had to then be put on football scholarship. He made his way back to his true sport this spring and led the team amongst freshmen in goals with over 20 on the season, including a sweep behind the back goal yesterday. So there is some football crossover, and Fitz, I think, an interesting thing for Jordan going back into a season where new quarterback, new offense, he's going to be a big part of this, but he comes in having seen under the hood of, hey, this championship outlet with 2 of the best leaders in Chris and Pat Kavanaugh that we've had in program history.
I love the fact that you actually made a legitimate tie out of my smart-ass comment. That is a chef's kiss to you. Also, we all know that Notre Dame alumni at football games are everywhere. So were you the most famous Notre Dame alumni at the lacrosse championship? Or where did GoJo rank in the pantheon of fame of Notre Dame alumni there?
I mean, listen, there were a lot of great lacrosse alumni that people around there certainly knew and were excited to see. A lot of the guys that are still playing in the PLL. It was very nice. Like, I had people that were coming up and saying hi, mostly because I've been fanboying around this program since I was a freshman in college. My freshman year roommate was a guy named Sean Rogers, who was a star attackman on the Notre Dame lacrosse team when I was in school. And so I spent a ton of time in college with these guys, and since have always been a big fan of this team. And that's why it fits every year on Champ Weekend. My pitch to people, that is former Notre Dame lacrosse and football star Nick Acello there, that I was feeding a fireball shot to in the parking lot to try and help him through the tough times out there getting ready for this game. But it's a great bond between the two teams on campus for all the reasons that I mentioned. There have been plenty of guys that have crossed over. Will Yateman was a teammate of mine who was a member of the Notre Dame lacrosse program as well. But this is a really fun group to be a part of here, and fun to see what it's grown into now. Like, Jason, looking at this current team, the Tuaraton is the MVP for college lacrosse. It is their Heisman Trophy. The trophy ceremony for that is coming up on Thursday. Notre Dame's goalie, Liam Entenmann, who's going to go down as the greatest goalie in Notre Dame history, had 16 saves in this game and was a brick wall, is one of the finalists for it. And Pat Cavanaugh, Notre Dame's all-time points leader, one of the members of the Cavanaugh family that started with Matt when I was in school, his older brother, who he's going to go play with in the PLL with the Boston Cannons, and now will be continued by his younger brother Chris, who was just named the most outstanding player of the tournament after an unbelievable run. They're, I think, for their sport, pound for pound, the most impactful family in Notre Dame sports history, with what each of them has given this program. Now 2 back-to-back wins of the championship, and what I think will likely be a win for Pat Cavanaugh with the Tuaraton. I think they should split it. I think Liam and Pat deserve to split it. It's happened once, one other time with the Thompsons in Albany back in the day. I think they should do that again. So this has been a team that's changed the trajectory, and a family that's changed the trajectory of this program's history, Claudia.
We have a video of Mrs. Cavanaugh crowd surfing, which I didn't think that was a thing. So as we look at this, though, GoJo is right here cheering her on like he is watching a sporting event, which, I mean, this is impressive, and she is loving it. GoJo, what was this like in person?
It was incredible. So, yeah, Mrs. Cavanaugh was in the crowd, living and dying with every moment for her boys out there. An absolute legend, and decided once we got into double digits that she'd be willing to do. Now, in the football season, they do push-ups for every touchdown and point scored in the crowd there. We decided to go the opposite direction here and give her a little bit easier time with it. But getting up to a 15 goal total there, it was a lot of work for everybody involved, and I was over there helping absolutely not at all. So didn't do my part, just stole a bunch of camera time courtesy of Mrs. Cavanaugh, but she is an absolute legend, and I cannot count the number of times I thanked her for what her and her family have done for Notre Dame, because it is hard to really put into words how important that family has been for this program, Jason.
Claudia, I just want to clue you in on something. Like, everybody should know this. I've been working in some capacity with Mike Golic Jr. since, I think, late 2016. And when we started working together full-time around 18 all the time, ever since then, I have heard him speak this glowingly and excitedly about lacrosse so many times. And the glow he gets on his face, I've always tried to put my thumb on exactly what it reminds me of. And today it has finally hit me. I feel like if you walked up to a 10-year-old kid that loves Harry Potter and you were like, so tell me about Harry Potter. And all of a sudden he just gets this grin. He's like, really? And there's just boom, just gives you all of this Harry Potter. That's what we just watched Mike do. Mike went full 10-year-old Harry Potter with lacrosse. And I'm all in for all of it. By the way, fireball shots, Mike? Are we just going to gloss over that? Were there a lot of fireball shots, buddy? Like,
there are a lot of beers. There were a lot of fireball shots. We had a rain delay. The real winner of this weekend was Lincoln Financial Field's food and beverage sales during that 2-hour rain delay when we were all in the concourse, doing whatever we had to get back to the action there. And that action culminates with a 15-5 Notre Dame win for back-to-back national championships. I always tell people this is a great sport, and you'll love it if you spend some time with it. Champ Weekend is a great sell, and for my money, the Cavanaugh brothers, who emulated the Thompsons from Albany back in the day, for another generation of kids are going to be the kind of guys that are so fun, so creative, and so tenacious, you can't help but get into the sports. And I think a generation of kids now in their backyards are going to be trying to emulate what they saw Pat and Chris Cavanaugh doing together on a lacrosse field for this sport and for this program. So thanks, fellas. Go Irish. I might crack another beer during the rest of the show. We're just getting started, baby. Charlotte Wilder's going to have to come in here in hour number 2 and try and put a lid on your boy, because I can't be stopped right now. Back-to-back champs. Suck it, nerds. All right, hour number 2 here on GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz, Claudia Bellafato here. We are still actively tracking my parents' journey as my dad and mom are on their road trip from Scottsdale, Arizona, back to Notre Dame with 3 dogs in tow and a Buc-ee's trip somewhere mixed in the middle here. We've been talking all morning about road trippers from the world of sports. And so to help us out with that and plenty more as we look ahead somewhat cautiously at the potential 10-day gap between the conference finals and the NBA finals because everyone felt like sweeping. Charlotte Wilder, the co-host of an NBA podcast, Oddball, joins us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, first of all, go Celtics. Second of all, if you are watching this in a visual format, I lost my AirPods over the weekend. So I've got some old school earbud strings going on. I feel very cool. And so do the Celtics because they finally beat a team in the Eastern Conference Finals, which I guess only didn't happen last year, but has haunted me since. GoJo.
Charlotte, you're coming in with way better energy about this already than we've had from Claudia, our other resident Boston Celtics fan. So I am curious now. You seem happy about this. You seem pleased with the result here in a way that's eluded most Celtics fans right now.
Really? Are people not happy? I guess I haven't been.
I just you're all setting expectations and waiting for the other shoe to drop and still thinking and listening to the criticisms from the outside world that this championship road that you've been on has been one of the easiest in recent memory.
Yeah, look, I think no matter what happens with this season, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for the Celtics, right? Because if they win, everyone will be like, all right, well, you did it. And if they don't, it'll be like, well, that was a massive failure. And the upside is really, everyone's going to be like, this should have an asterisk. Like this was a cakewalk to the finals. This was the easiest schedule. Everybody they played was hurt, blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know. I'll still be pretty psyched if they win a championship. And I don't think I realized, guys, just how scarred I was by last year's Eastern Conference championships, because when they won last night, I felt this weight rise up off of my shoulders and happiness flood my heart and fill a void that I had an idea might be there, but wasn't totally sure just how vast it was. And I feel a little cleansed today. I don't know. Does that make sense to anybody?
Look, I've been screaming this, Charlotte, but like, I don't want to oversimplify, but what's the point? If you can't enjoy this entire run, like what is the point of rooting for a team that's trying to win a championship if along the way you're just poo-pooing the entire run? It's like, well, it's just the regular season and we'll see, and the team can't rebound well enough to get to the playoffs. It's like, now all of a sudden, well, we can't really score in the clutch and we should be winning these games by more. And then you get a gentleman sweep, and a sweep, and you're like, I don't know, team just doesn't look good enough. And it's like, at what point do you sit back and actually enjoy the fact that your team is in the NBA? I am with you 100%. Like Celtics fans all just need to relax, and enjoy a little bit of fun basketball. Good God.
I mean, Claudia's upset.
No, you guys are making me out to be a terrible person. It's basically like when I lose 5 pounds during the week because all I eat is smoothies and salads and work out, I don't get excited because I'm going to gain that back by eating as much pasta and fried food and, some nice drinkies over the weekend. I gained the 5 pounds back. So it's just like, I don't want to set myself up to be upset. I'm very happy for the Celtics. They're a very talented team. I've been waxing poetic about that all season long. All I'm saying is, if something bad were to happen, like losing in the finals, I'm not going to be shocked.
Yeah, but
look, and Claudia, this is not just you. Like, let me just, I'm hopeful my bosses are not watching this right now. My 2 main bosses at Yahoo are the biggest Celtics fans ever. And every time we have a production meeting, all you hear is like, well, I don't know, I'm giving up on this every time. And I'm like, what is the point? And I hear you on this, but like, at what point in life do you sit there? Like, if you spend the entire time on your vacation worrying about if it's going to rain tomorrow, then you probably didn't have a good beach vacation. But every day it turned out it didn't rain, but you're like, oh, I don't know, it was cloudy. Like, at what point do you just sit back and be like, oh man, I'm on the beach and things are pretty good?
First of all, Fitz, never. New Englanders, they never enjoy vacations. New Englanders constantly worried it's going to rain. New Englanders always waiting for the other shoe to drop, can't get excited. This is a cultural situation. I think a lot of people in the Northeast love being miserable. It is something that I myself have been working on my entire life. And so I think that when it comes to this Celtics run, it has felt, I think there's also this feeling of like, at least for me, growing up in New England, it was like if you're not working super hard for it, it's not worth it, or it's not enjoyable in the way that something that seems easy should be. You know, it's like I think I go to California and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? You can just like be happy? Like, I don't understand. And so I think that I think there's a deep cultural thing going on here. I think this team has also scarred Celtics fans for a few years in a row now. But watching last night, I have been a neurotic Celtics fan this season, Fitz. I really have. But last night, something broke in me where I was like, or something healed in me rather, because I was watching Tatum and Brown. You know, Brown wins the MVP of the ECFs. Tatum throws a ball in the air, looks so happy. You've got Drew Holiday with his kids, Al saying he's starving for a championship. And it felt to me, I remembered in 2018 watching this team go up against the Cavs and being so excited, having so much fun watching this team play basketball. And I felt that again. And this series, they swept the Pacers by closing out in big moments. What's the thing that people have said all season about the Celtics? They don't close out in big moments. Jason Tatum's not clutch. They don't get it together when it really matters. And I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure a sweep is very good evidence that they did. So I think I'm excited. If they lose in the finals, they lose in the finals. Give us a good game. Like, they got there. You know, I think I'm psyched. I'm really psyched.
I'm glad for you, Charlotte. I think what you mentioned about the way they did this, even in the clutch, is noteworthy, because the Pacers last night went the final 3 minutes and 30 seconds without scoring. That is in part credit to the Boston Celtics defense, which we know is one of the best in the league. But even the final sequence where Jason Tatum, who has all of these clutch time stats lobbed in his face, misses a three, and the Celtics win the game because Drew Holiday gets an offensive rebound, that is incredibly emblematic of the kind of depth on this team. Like, I thought all of that was really, really on brand for this Boston Celtics group. What I think is interesting to hone in on, outside of psychoanalyzing New Englanders, which, as someone who grew up in that part of the country, I totally understand it. As someone who lives in California, everything that Charlotte is saying is valid about the way these two sides of the country digest happiness. But I want to think about breaking down the backcourt, because what we're getting set for here is something that I think is also going to keep Celtics fans up at night, is the potential to see Kyrie Irving again. It seems like the Dallas Mavericks, whether they do it in a sweep or in a gentleman's sweep or what have you, are going to be the team that moves on from the Western Conference Finals up 3-0. And Kyrie Irving is going to return home to a backcourt that he wanted to come and be the leader for early on in their careers. And part of the trajectory of this entire current Celtics core was Kyrie Irving got hurt before a postseason where these guys went toe-to-toe with LeBron James well before they were ready to. And just to keep in mind of the different force of nature they were going up against, and why everybody that's left in this Final Four is dealing with an almost impossible burden in trying to overcome what we believe great basketball should be and what we've been spoiled by in this recent generation. Listen to how great Jason Tatum has been and how that still pales in comparison to what we've seen. I saw the stat last night that Jaylen Brown, he won the MVP for the Eastern Conference Finals, but Jason Tatum led in points, rebounds, and assists. He is now one of 5 players in NBA history to lead his team in points, rebounds, and assists while reaching the NBA Finals. He joins Jason Kidd from 2002, Tim Duncan from 2003, Nikola Jokic from last year, and LeBron James 4 years in a row. LeBron James did that 4 years in a row from 2012 to 2015. That is why I think we're so hard on this Celtics team and damn near everybody else, whether it's trying to make Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan, maybe before he's ready, even if there are some valid comparisons, is because we just came off this all-time run and we're watching a player that, doesn't meet that profile in so many ways, but is touching that rarefied air. And so, Charlotte, I want to start with you. When you look at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown now in that backcourt. And the fact that you are seeing Jaylen Brown finally maybe get a little bit more of the credit he's deserved, despite being opposite what's objectively one of the most talented, if not a player that's wired with that dog in the way that we want him to here. What is an accurate way to sum up this Celtics duo as we head into what could be one of the most important chapters of their career?
Well, I think they put up historic numbers together. I think going into this season, a lot of people, with the failure last year in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat, people were like, break them up. And it was like, well, why? Like, what do you think you're going to get that's better than these guys who are scoring at historic rates together? Like, honestly, tell me what you would do and who you would bring in and how you would make this all work without Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think what's fascinating to me is the age of all of it. I think did we talk about this on here, Gojo? But the age at which players win championships, like it's around 27. Yes, we did. And so Tatum now at 27. What's fascinating to me about the Mavs is you have Kyrie, who's 25. I mean, Luka, who's 25, even though he looks like the oldest soul in the world. Like that man, that there is a 67-year-old man inside that 25-year-old's body. And you have Kyrie Irving, who I think has matured so much. And aside all the off-court stuff, like he's focused on basketball this year, and he has played really good basketball, and he has been a great teammate, and his attitude has changed completely from anything we saw. So, I mean, I am fascinated. We'll have a lot of time, especially if the Mavs do sweep, and also this would be amazing bulletin board material for the Wolves to if they do manage to claw back in any way here. But I think this matchup is going to be absolutely crucial, and it's exactly what people have been critiquing about Tatum this whole time is, he can't come through when it matters, which is, as you say, so wild because his stats are so crazy. And I don't know if we would expect that of anybody else if we weren't in this transition period where it's like, okay, we just had such unbelievable performances from LeBron and Steph for so many years and all of the Warriors. And it was just crazy. And I think that fans are still sort of level setting in terms of like Jason Tatum is a generational player, but if he's not winning the way that we're used to seeing, if it's not already a dynasty, like people forget you have to get there first. You have to win to win again. And the psychology behind all of it, I agree, is absolutely insane.
And I think we've come up point. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Isn't at some point the greatness of Brown and Tatum sort of cooked into why the expectations are what they are? Like it speaks to the greatness of those two particular players that we are in a world where we like to have certain players that we're like, got to win a championship, otherwise you must suck. Like, so if Steph doesn't win a championship, everyone's like abject disaster. If LeBron doesn't win a championship, abject disaster. We put Brown and Tatum in that conversation, even though they haven't won all of those championships, even though they haven't raised those banners. And that speaks to their greatness. Part of the reason that the Celtics are being viewed the way they're being viewed is because how can you have two players that are this great together and not win chips? It doesn't make sense to a lot of people's minds. So I think that part of the reason we've skewed what we expect from Boston is because of the greatness, specifically to answer your question, Mike, of those two players.
Well, and I think it's interesting going up in this series, like we spend so much time in NBA discourse lionizing a very specific brand of basketball. Like I think starting with Michael Jordan and working through a guy like Kobe Bryant, that sort of like alpha, killer, in ISO basketball, tough shot making stuff is in our heads the most aesthetically pleasing style of basketball. And it's the one we most associate with an attitude that most of us can't ever reach. Like most of us are never going to be the alpha on our field and dominate in that same way. And so when we see that in certain people in sports, we look at that as the only way. LeBron did a lot. Steph did a lot for trying to defeat some of that archetype. But Charlotte, we're getting ready to go up into a backcourt matchup where I think it's safe to say that Luka and Kyrie are everything that on paper people assume that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are not, Claudia, in terms of when they step up the most and the attitude they bring to it. Luka Doncic is a jerk. Like Luka Doncic on the court is a jerk every bit in the way that people like Kobe Bryant and some of those killers from the past that we lionize are supposed to be.
It's just the opposite of the Celtics, too. The Celtics just are quiet. They show people up. They sweep them or gentlemen sweep, and they go on with their day. So I think it's the first time I've ever heard Jaylen Brown even swear in a post conference. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very different vibes for these two squads. If it is Dallas, and at DraftKings Sportsbook, we do have the odds for what that matchup would be. Plus 185, they're saying if Minnesota does get there, but I think that's just so unlikely that they have the same odds for both squads. So Dallas would be plus 185 in this series. Celtics minus 225. Charlotte, I know, as I said earlier, I have an analyst hat and a fan hat, so of course I want to see this Celtics squad win. Of course I do think they can win, despite their easy path. So I'm curious, do you see any value with the plus money in Dallas winning that series, or do you think it's Boston?
No, I think it's anybody's game. I think that Kyrie and Luka are this unstoppable force, and I think that the whole Celtics team is an unstoppable force. And I think it will be very interesting when one of those forces has to stop. And Mike, to your point, I think something that's fascinating to me, you mentioned the sort of iso basketball, alpha male, lionized vibe. That's very American. Like, that's what people think you are supposed to be. That's why there are all these people who like try to hack their brains and like, you know, drink spinach and then stare at the sun and it'll make them more of a man, because like this individual idea that you can make yourself better. And the truth is that basketball is a team sport. Michael Jordan doesn't do what he does without Scottie Pippen. Like, you know, that there's this idea of, I think that's why Jaylen Brunson captured people's imagination so much this year, because he...
And it's why we've been so drunk off Anthony Edwards during this postseason run. It's why we probably got so far out over our skis with what that Timberwolves team was capable of, because Anthony Edwards gave us a taste of that on and off the course. He was everything that we have wanted a basketball player, to your point, maybe a larger American archetype to be.
Yeah, and I think that what's fascinating about the Celtics team is they're a team. And it's wild to see people who are so talented play as a team. You know, like Jason Tatum, people, his criticism is because it's like, well, he didn't do it alone. And it's like, well, I'm sorry. Would you like a basketball team to win a championship? Because what happens in those situations is Drew Holiday, oh, look, a nice little thumbs up. Drew Holiday gets a stop to win the game. Like Jaylen Brown goes off on a night Jason Tatum can't. Like it's this mentality of like the individual has to rise above the team, which is actually not really how most people or things or entities win anything.
But that's how we've couched the coverage of the NBA in general, in the fact that Mike has heard me just yell at this all the time. I can turn on most large debate shows and it's like, yeah, but how many chips did he win? It's a team sport. This is not Michael Phelps taking on a bunch of other swimmers in a pool. Like at the end of the day, I do not believe that you can assign team championships to individual legacies. Like it takes an entire team to win a championship. I don't care if we're talking about quarterbacks. I don't care if we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I don't care if we're talking about NBA players. Like we want to make everything about this one guy should will everybody to victory. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way. I know that's simple, Mike, but it doesn't work that way.
I do think that there is something to the idea, like remember the Titans quote, attitude reflects leadership. All of those things are things that we see have tangible results in sports. Like I just, wax poetic about a Notre Dame lacrosse team that was marked by depth this season the same way the Celtics team were, but their two leaders are dogs. They're junkyard dogs who will tear your head off, and the whole rest of their team takes their cue from that. When you look around sports, most teams take their cue. Tom Brady wanting to bite everyone's heads off in New England for 2 decades as he was the face of that franchise here. And now you look at on the other side, as we're getting ready to turn the page on some of these old dynasties, people are trying to look for that. And they're saying, hey, look at what Anthony Edwards did for Karl Anthony Towns, a guy that just does not have that same level of outward dog in him, and came in and created a space where he gives him confidence by having confidence out there. Luka Doncic has that same sort of snarl to him and has a backcourt mate now in Kyrie that he trusts enough. And everyone looks at this Boston team and goes, yes, a bunch of depth and a bunch of great players, but when things do get really hard, and if they ever do, finally in the NBA Finals in a way they haven't on that road here, are they going to have that same intestinal fortitude and attitude from their leadership that some of these other teams have been able to count on here? That's the one thing that we're waiting and trying to find out from this group, and I think that might be the source of some of the consternation among fans who are watching this team at this great run.
back here on GoJo and Golic with the theme of expectations. We just talked about it with the Celtics. Are expectations too high? Should they be high? Well, we know for sure they're high for Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick in the NFL. And wow, a rookie, maybe not looking perfect, not 100% in OTAs, but yes, that is the headline because expectations are very high for this rookie quarterback. But apparently the defense, which was one of the better ones last season, has been getting to him. They're saying he's being late on throws, holding on a bit too long to the ball, incompletions an issue. But it's all right. The veterans are saying he'll be okay. This is safety Kevin Byard on what he said about the rookie quarterback.
I said something to him at the end of the practice, like, hey, keep it going. We're going to keep making you better. And, not necessarily saying that you just had a terrible day, but it's like days like this are going to make you better. So, that's our job. And like you said, honestly, just the first 3 days, obviously we had 3 practices. He's done a lot of positive things. He's made some really great throws and just coming in with that swag as, obviously as a rookie quarterback, but he doesn't seem flustered by anything. So that's exciting to see.
GoJo, how much of this is overreaction, maybe being a little bit too critical of the rookie quarterback, or do you think it's probably just right because he is a rookie quarterback?
This is all overreaction. This is so dumb, and honestly, it makes me so scared for if we wind up with this massive gap between the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals and the NBA finals that won't start till June 6th, because this is the kind of reaching that goes on during the offseason where we're just bored. Quite honestly, it's also like the dove climbing of the internet where all these aggregator monster accounts put together the stupidest headlines on planet Earth coming off of OTAs where this stuff does not matter right now. Like, you want your young quarterbacks taking chances. They're gonna learn going against these one defenses in the NFL for the first time. The Bears defense is really good coming off last year and should be even better this year. So no, Fitz, this is one of the dumbest thing known to man. And it seems largely like an internet thing. Like, this is one of those where I caution if this is even being talked about in real life, as much as this is just, again, the dumb state of the poisoned internet that Elon's made for us.
So let me be the old man in the room for a minute because, I'm filling in for your dad. So I feel like that's the appropriate role to take here. Look, and I just called your dad an old man. I'm going to hear about that on Twitter later.
Old man saying stupid stuff yet again.
I remember when I was a kid. Okay. And look, I'm about to turn 47 in a few days, right? So I'm an old guy, but I remember when I was a kid that you would have to go to the corner store and you'd have to buy a USA Today on Fridays, and it would have a little paragraph about every game. And that's the only way you knew what was going to happen. And on Monday, you go back to that same corner store, and you would buy the USA Today, and you get the recap. And if you were lucky, there'd be a picture. I had to wait for the 10-minute ticker for NFL game scores to come up because you didn't know the Raiders weren't always on TV as a kid. I say that because I often joke at training camp time, we went from a spot in society where you had to wait days to see a picture of a game to somebody has one bad practice during training camp and you're hearing from 10 different writers, well, he dropped 3 balls. This is the over coverage that can be so bad in the process. The kid barely knows, the grown man, whatever, barely knows what they're trying to install at this point. Anybody that has seen a playbook, go look at Orlovsky's video or Chase Daniel's video of what a playbook looks like and tell me how the hell you expect that there'd be any comprehension at this point. So Caleb's just out there trying things. And when you're going to try things, you're going to take chances. You should throw picks because you're trying to figure out what your windows look like and where you can go with the ball and what it's like to throw to. This is all part of the normal process, Charlotte. And because the Bears haven't had a good quarterback since before even Golic Sr. was around, everybody is going to turn around and be like, oh my God, he's got, give it some time. It doesn't have to be, even CJ Stroud wasn't amazing the first couple of games of last season. Let's give it just a little bit of time for this whole thing to marinate.
Yeah, totally, Fitz. I think that we could have a long conversation about media and the internet and what it's done to information and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do that because, I respect you all far too much. But I think that it is when there's a void, as you said, Mike, if there are 10 days between the conference finals and the NBA finals, people have to talk about something because we've created an ecosystem where, the internet feeds the shows of which we are a part. The shows feed the internet. You have to, nature abhors a vacuum. And if there's a vacuum, you got to fill it with something. And sometimes Caleb Williams is going to drop a bunch of passes and that's going to be the thing you fill it with. And what's so impressive to me, and something I've been thinking about a lot this year is, a lot of people talk about you can't be afraid to fail. And for a while, I didn't really even know what that meant, because I was like, what is failing even really? Like, there are so many, like, how high do the stakes have to be for you to have actually failed? And I think what people really mean is like, don't be afraid to be embarrassed. Like, if you're going to be good at something, you're going to have to get embarrassed a lot before you get there. And I think for a lot of these young athletes, and, I think partly why you're talking about the Celtics, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have sort of turned inward, is because it's like, okay, if you want us to win a championship, there are going to be some embarrassing things that happen along the way that we're going to have to overcome. And we have to shut all the noise out to be able to do that. And so someone like Caleb Williams, like, I hope he's just got blinders on and earplugs in and he's not looking at any of this, because as you said, Fitz, to try, if you try stuff, you're going to be bad at it and then you're going to get good at it. And so I think that all it comes down to is like having the stomach and the mental fortitude to do things, be embarrassed. I mean, when I was first starting doing stuff on camera, I look back at some of those clips and I'm like, I can't watch this. But you know what? I did, and I did it, and I kept doing it anyway, to the point where now I don't cringe quite as much when I see my step back. Not completely. I mean, it's a little, but there's this, like, you have to do it to get better at it. And that's what we're witnessing right now.
Think about this too, Charlotte, to your point. When I first started, like, my podcast, it got me to where I was at ESPN before podcasts were a thing. I edited every breath out, every like I've spent years editing, string tracks. So I edited those things to be so tight because I was so embarrassed by it. And like, I recorded my first ever episode of a podcast in my car because I was so worried somebody would hear me and I would feel like an idiot. Like, think about open mic nights for or even nights where comedians will come out and say, hey, I'm trying new material tonight, guys. And like, there's going to be some hits and misses like that. That's part of the process in almost every career, is that you've got to figure some things out. And we just want Caleb Williams to walk in and suddenly be QB1, Mike, like at a gross level from day one.
Well, I think it's funny, though, like, we're comparing two industries that are in some ways incomparable. Like, the nature of what we do is subjective. The beauty of sports, and the thing I quite honestly miss the most, is, hey, man, most of it's binary. Like, when we talk about, like, embarrassment requires shame, and this isn't a shame case for Caleb. This is, hey, this is practice, and there is an objective on each play. And if you don't complete it, that's a failure. Now, there's a how you do certain things, and there's the technique of certain things, and even amongst those decisions, there can be things, but each play has, hey, a right way and a wrong way to do things based on what we're taught as athletes. And going through that now, the one thing you want is, to Charlotte's point, Caleb to be willing to get a few plays wrong, to crack a few eggs in order to make an omelet. The one thing I've heard quarterbacks like our buddy Dan Orlovsky talk about over at ESPN is a quarterback stinger. Like, whatever it is that helps differentiate that guy, the willingness to take chances that we've seen from the Patrick Mahomes and the Josh Allens of the world, these wild stallions, as I've heard Nate Tice refer to them as. And so I would much rather have a quarterback that, especially when, to Charlotte's point, the stakes are low right now in the offseason, willing to push it and try stuff right now, because that's the only way you're going to get to a point where he's comfortable doing that later on, is to be willing to see those live bullets not go your way early on and to test the limits of what you've got right now.
It's so interesting that the question of, does embarrassment require shame? Because I think embarrassment can also just be like feeling silly. And I think like looking a little goofy, because I think, to your point, Mike, there's not really shame in not completing a pass in OTAs, but you are going to feel silly if, as you're talking about, Fitz, everybody is writing down every time you drop a ball, which is where I think the blocking out the noise can be very helpful, and is much a part of being an athlete. And that's a training. You have to train yourself to get used to it and then ignore it when it's stuff that's silly.
I mean, Mike, I know you were in the NFL for less time than it takes you to film a Blizzard review on social media, but when you were there, you have to remember that your head had to be on a swivel when you went into those first practices, right? Like, it had to be a little overwhelming. Now imagine having expectations when you walk in.
So I always said, it's like there's two very different motivators in sports. There's being like me, where we're on the back end just hoping every day that your helmet's still in your locker. And then there's the other end where you're Caleb Williams and you have an entire city expecting you to be the thing they've never had in that franchise's history. And that is an entirely different kind of pressure that only very few are capable of shouldering. right, welcome back to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz here for the DraftKings Network visual audience immortalized on this poster of Superbad. And yeah, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I wound up as Jonah Hill on this one there. Oh, that's my
you better ended up like if I ended up as Jonah Hill, I'm walking off. That's it. Like I'm out. Like my body is a temple. You make me Jonah Hill right now. Ooh, we would be fighting.
If you're going to be any character from Superbad, Fitz, you're McLovin right now. You're an Irish pop star skinnily being pulled out of a house by cops.
You don't know this, but the scene with McLovin's birthday or with his ID, the birthday on it is June 3rd, also my birthday. So every year I get the McLovin thing. So you're not wrong. Maybe I'm more McLovin in this whole process, but like, look, I got a soft spot. I just don't want to be the fat guy, Mike. I don't want to be the fat guy.
Oh, dear God. We'll get to, at some point, Jason Fitz's quest for abs that he's currently on right now. And we will get to probably tomorrow, the all-weekend team. We're coming off a holiday weekend. We know there's been plenty of sports, and we want to celebrate all of that. But today is just not that day because we've got something far more important that's going on here today. As you saw in that poster, and for anyone that may have missed it, we had a shocking, horrifying revelation go on in this show last Friday before the end of the week, courtesy of our dear friend Claudia Bellafato, who's been doing such a great job here at the show, but is considerably younger than everybody else here. And with that age gap comes certain things that she's just going to miss. And one of them, as you're going to see right here, was the shock and horror when we realized that she had not seen one of the all-time comedic classics in Superbad.
This is a scene out of Superbad. Please tell me,
I was just going to say, it seems like the
Superbad.
dude just watched Superbad.
Yeah. Yeah, please tell me you've seen Superbad.
I haven't, but like
Oh my God! Oh no!
I'm like, totally that scene.
I was going to say, you were about to smile and nod through that so hard.
Come on! No, I had to ask.
But I get the like the mood, the vibe of the movie. So yeah.
So in addition to watching all the NBA postseason this weekend, watching the Stanley Cup playoffs this weekend, watching, I'm sure, a little bit of Notre Dame lacrosse, the Monaco Grand Prix, and all these other things, Claudia Bellafato, ever a woman of her word, said she was going to go out and watch Superbad this weekend and made good on it. So Claudia, first and foremost, I saw you actually posting about this. What were your impressions? Because I'm always fascinated to see, especially how comedy holds up over time. And this is a movie that came out, I believe, in 2008, so it would have been a while ago for you. What your thoughts were of Superbad?
It was funny. I think I watched it more, and I'm happy I watched it more because I understand the sayings. It's like it was a culture experience for me. So it was funny. I think Jonah Hill's hilarious, just his type of humor, like that dry, straightforward. I love that. So it was good. I enjoyed it. It was probably the perfect amount of length. Any longer, I would have turned it off, but it was good.
Wow.
Do we believe her, folks?
No, I don't. It doesn't really seem like you like this movie.
I do. I really struggle to watch movies in general. But I didn't go to my phone as much as I thought. And I don't know if that's because I had some Capri Suns the night before or what. And I just didn't want to do anything but watch something that hurt my brain cells. So that's fine. That's how I am, Charlotte. If you weren't here, I was, and Fitz too. The way that I am with some of these really silly movies is like, okay, I'm dedicating 2 or more hours of my time and I'm not learning anything, and I'm sometimes I feel like I'm getting dumber. But with a movie like this, it was fine. It was
not
good.
Learning anything. What are we like you want Nat Geo on all the time or something?
I like to watch documentaries.
Oh my God. I mean, like,
I'll be honest, you can learn a lot about the structure of jokes from some of those. I also think that this is not fair to Claudia because there's a cultural moment where, like, I was in college and I think, friends of mine in their apartment they bought like the letters you put on a mailbox and wrote out across the top of the wall, "I never had a choice," which is from Superbad. I think it's from the part where they're trying to get booze and the cop, but like these phrases became people's personalities in a way that if you hadn't seen them, you didn't know what someone was about. So
Charlotte, trust me, as a former recovering fat guy in an offensive line room, when you are the large, objectively smellier and objectively less attractive group of people, you make all of this your personality. Movie quotes are the things that we traded. Witticisms are the things that we survived on. So all that you're talking about, yes, absolutely. If you couldn't trade in that stuff in an offensive line room, if Fitz, I'd imagine being a reformed chubby fiddle player, that was something that you had to probably make part of your personality. True.
No. So this is where I'm the worst. Like, because Superbad's what I always call a tour bus movie. Because like it's on, nobody changes it. I've probably seen Superbad 100 times. I cannot tell you a single, like the number of times somebody quotes Superbad and I'd look at them and they're like, it's from the movie. I don't remember movie quotes or like I watch it, I see it, I absorb it. It's funny in the moment. I've seen Wedding Crashers 1,000 times. I still can't really get a movie quote right to save my life. None of it. Movies are in one ear, out the other. I love going to the movies. I don't retain any of it, Mike. So literally none of it sticks with me, even if I've seen it 100 times.
That's probably the effect of the drugs, but that's neither here nor there. What we want to try and do to see what Claudia's comprehension was of this is, Claudia, I have a series of trivia questions about the movie Superbad that I'm going to try and read to you here. They are varying in terms of their degree of difficulty, ranging from very easy to ones that I can't even readily get right off the bat. So I want to start out with this one here. This should be pretty easy for anyone that's ever seen the movie. McLovin, the character that I just comped Jason Fitz to, in this movie famously gets a fake ID. Where is that fake ID from?
Hawaii. Come on. Everybody knows that. I didn't even have to see it. Hawaii, yeah. Too easy.
All right, you know what? Listen, again, for someone that, like a lot of the generation that has come up below us that is slowly destroying the movie industry as we know it, along with other factors here, but not the least of which is people's attention spans kind of changing the way that people make movies, I can't take anything for granted. Second one, when picking up Evan for school and throughout the school day, Seth is wearing a t-shirt with a celebrity's picture on it. Who is that celebrity?
I actually remember the shirt, but I don't even think I knew who it was, to be honest. So yeah.
Charlotte, do you remember?
It was like a silly face or a guy with a hat. I remember it, but
yeah, no, I
that
don't.
Is
Mike.
that is all-time great comedian Richard Pryor.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I had no idea on that one either. We'll keep it moving here. Seth and Evan are in home ec class together, learning to prepare the day that Seth partners with Jules. What are they learning how to make in home ec class during that day when he partners with Jules?
Tiramisu.
All right, let's go.
And they had
by the way,
and it looked really ugly, and they had all the little fingers over the top. Yeah, see?
All right, there we go. She's locked in, folks, and love a good tiramisu, by the way. They're making Oreo thins that are tiramisu flavor. I wish they would make Oreo thicks in that same flavor, but I digress. What kind of lunchbox does a young Seth keep his taboo drawings of penises in?
Wait, I don't even think I remember the scene. I don't think this was in my movie. Maybe they took it out. I really don't remember seeing that.
Is it a Lisa Frank tin lunchbox?
No, it is not. That would have been really haunting in a lot of ways, but that would have been very funny. It was Ghostbusters lunchbox that he kept that in here. This is one, Claudia, based on what you've done so far, I think you'll get. What type of liquor does Becca ask Evan to get for her at the liquor store?
Gold Flake vodka.
Gold Slick, but I'll give you that one because it's basically supposed to be the movie version of Goldschlager, which I'm sure Fitz has more gold flakes lying around in his stomach from years on a tour bus than anyone should legally. Forget all the plastic in men's testicles. You've got so much gold in your stomach, I bet you can barely move.
The amount of Goldschlager at one pre-tour bus, because I'm old, the amount of Goldschlager I drank was not comfortable. I'm telling you.
Oh, God.
Goldschlager was a moment for me.
Oh, yeah. Were you guys stunned at the plastic and testicles? You guys haven't seen those headlines going out here. We're in a dangerous place right now.
I heard the testicles. I thought we were just going to ignore that part, but no, that rang heavy in my head.
We've said that word enough for the show. I don't think that word needs to be said again for the rest.
Yeah.
Well, you know what word I think needs to be said now? Proud is what I am of Claudia because she's done an excellent job on this trivia. She was a woman of her word this weekend, and now she is indoctrinated into the church of Superbad like the rest of us who grew up making this our personality. Coming up next, though, speaking of making things your personality, when will billionaires stop trying to kill themselves in the ocean? We'll find that out next year on GoJo and Golic. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do, guys. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send everybody into the rest of their day. Short week, too, which is awesome. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Check out our good buddy Jason Fitz, who is co-hosting with us for the next couple of days over at Yahoo Sports, doing all sorts of great content there at Jason Fitz on Twitter as well. Check out Charlotte Wilder and Amin El Hassan, co-hosts of Oddball, great NBA podcast every day but Monday, which is perfect for this holiday week, wherever you get your podcasts here on the DraftKings Network as the NBA playoffs roll along. You missed any of that, get it wherever you get your podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. We've also got an update. We've been tracking my dad's road trip through Middle America as he's making the drive back from Scottsdale to South Bend, and he made it. A Buc-ee's in Missouri. My father, resplendent in all his zaddy glory, out in front of one of the greatest rest stops known to mankind. Waiting to see if he gives the Beaver Nuggets review, which, Charlotte, you weren't on before when we were talking about this as much. Have you been to a Buc-ee's?
No. Sorry. I haven't.
Oh, no. It's fine. It's very much a, south of the Mason-Dixon line kind of thing, but anyone who has had the Beaver Nuggets will let you know those are a gift, handcrafted by the gods themselves. Just sprinkled beautiful cinnamon toast crunch dust on top of a corn pops like flake, all doused in what feels like maple syrup. At the end of the day, makes this an experience in your mouth unlike very few things on this earth. So hopefully Dad and Mom are getting a little bit of taste of that while we're on the road. We'll wait for the review there. In the meantime, guys, we will get on to this, that, and the third and try and make them as proud as we can here. And let's start off with this. Last time on Dragon Ball Z, we went through the experience with Ocean Submersible that ended in complete disaster as a group led by rich people tried to go down and see the Titanic and unfortunately all ended up losing their lives in a situation that unfortunately seemed very predictable. We're now going for round 2. An Ohio billionaire named Larry Connor plans to take a $20 million sub down to the Titanic site to prove that the industry is safe after the Ocean Gate implosion. Now, it's worth noting that famed director James Cameron has made this trip many times and would prove that himself with his own existence. But Charlotte, why are billionaires so obsessed with trying to go deep down in the ocean where no one should go?
Because the one thing money can't buy is command over nature or time. And they are trying to prove that they are big, important, strong men who are more than just very rich. And they're not, because we saw that someone built a submersible out of carbon fiber, which famously does not withstand pressure. And they all exploded. And I just think there are a few words here. First of all, billionaire. Always a red flag. Secondly, Ohio billionaire? Are you kidding me? You want me to go to the bottom of the ocean with someone from Ohio? No, thanks. Absolutely not.
There's not an ocean around there.
The ocean at all. Landlocked? Get out of town.
Ohio folks catching strays out here.
I'm sorry. If I'm going to the ocean. Yeah. Okay. If someone's going to take me to the Titanic, you better live and breathe salt water, because I am not going anywhere deep down into the ocean with someone from a landlocked state.
There's a deep dive to be done, Mike, about the fact that there are people that have so much wealth and now what they want is to figure out a way to live on as part of history, right? And being at the Titanic site and building the submersible that makes news makes you feel like you're part of history. You're willing to risk your life on it. Hey, dude, just send me like $10 million and I'll build you an inflatable raft. It ends up the same way and I get a little cash. That's all I'm saying.
I tell you what, this just goes back to my central theme, and I think I saw this written about in Slate the other day. None of these people being rich the right way. Give me those money. I promise you'd never see me again. You'd never hear any of this dumb stuff again. I'd be rich in the coolest way possible. And all these people are just really bad at it and need to figure out a way to do that better before they go and risk their lives in a submersible. So good luck and Godspeed. I hope it ends better. This person's apparently been working on this ship for over a decade, putting $20 million into it. And so I'm sure it'll look cool. And like Charlotte said, hopefully they pick better materials this time around and try and make better decisions for everyone involved. But just know, after last time, you have seen how bad it can go. So anyone that is not this Ohio billionaire that signs up for it is going to have a very hard time finding sympathy from anybody watching this situation played out. Speaking of unsympathetic characters, Claudia, let's get to that, as anytime you know the name of an official in sports, something has usually gone wrong. We now wave bye to one of the most known names in the history of Major League Baseball.
Yes, Angel Hernandez, whose strike zone was always changing and he was often wrong, although he would tell you he was right. but he wasn't, and it was clear as day. He's retiring. He was a full-time umpire starting in 1993. He started professionally at the age of 20 in the Florida State League, and he is known by players and managers as one of the game's worst umpires, which is unfortunate because I get it. It's the human side of baseball, and people do love having umpires. That's why we have kept them around for so long, and I can't imagine it's fun having everybody hate you. Some respect to him, he was in it for a while, but I think he is probably sick and tired of the hate, and he's gone, GoJo. He's retiring.
Well, and he also had been in the, discrimination lawsuit that he filed against Major League Baseball back in 2017, claiming that he was passed over for chances to umpire in the World Series, which he hadn't done since, I believe, 2005, and even in LCS since 2016. But Charlotte, looking at this broader situation again, anytime you know an official's name in sports, and Major League Baseball is one where the umpires have so often been accused of inserting themselves in the sport in a way that goes far too far and is far too self-serving. Angel Hernandez seemed to be at the center of that for far too long.
Yeah, I was laughing so hard because last night the Celtics have just won the Eastern Conference Finals, and I get an ESPN alert, and I'm like, oh, it's probably telling me that the Celtics have won the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's Angel Hernandez set to retire after 30-some years. And I was like, oh, wow. And the fact that it elicited an emotional response from, I was like, oh, wow. I showed my husband. I was like, Angel Hernandez is retiring. He was like, thank God. And I was like, what have we become as a society?
No, I want this. I think this needs to be the new trend. When you get to retirement parties, instead of glorifying Frank on the way out the door that you never really liked, let's all have an up yours Frank session where it's like, hated the guy the whole time. He's been a pain in the office. He's been problematic for 20 years. Like, let everything come out about Frank on the way out the door. This should be the new tradition.
I mean, we basically just need the roast of Angel Hernandez now, right? We're coming fresh off that with Tom Brady. You just allow people. The difference is it would just be a bunch of actually angry people MFing someone that no one in sports really liked. And again, we don't know the man in particular. Obviously, it's an unenviable position for all the reasons that Charlotte mentioned, but we seem to have a mechanism that's back in society for this now. So keep an eye out on Netflix for the roast of Angel Hernandez coming to a screen near you. Claudia, let's get to the third here. We all love, especially as someone that grew up with a mom who was a Brady Bunch fan, anytime famous homes from TV shows go on sale. And in this one, it's I think one of the most overrated movies of all time. And Home Alone house has come on sale in a Chicago suburb now that's got people very excited.
Yeah, and speaking of rich people, only a rich person will buy this because it's $5.25 million. It's hitting the market for the first time in 12 years, over 9,000 square feet, built in 1921, Chicago suburb. I get it, GoJo. Great flick. $5.25 million, though, and it's a nice house. I'm not going to lie. I don't really know what the Chicago market's like, but $5.25 just feels like a lot.
Claudia, have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it. The first one.
It has a full basketball course in the basement. Like a full basketball court in the basement of this home. It's worth $5 million. Come on, Mike, buy it for me.
I think it might.
Yeah, if it's
honestly,
not a chance.
5.2 seems sort of like a deal. I mean, maybe I'm all messed up in the head from looking at Brooklyn real estate, but I mean,
I didn't think it was this nice.
Not that I can afford it.
I didn't see the inside. I thought it was going to be old because 1921.
I'd buy it. I'd gut it and make it look just like the movie, and I'd Airbnb the you-know-what out of it in November, December for all the Christmas fanatics to sleep in the house, the Home Alone house. They would pay me tons of money. Bam! I'm the rest of the year I'm living in that thing for free. Come on, Mike, it's a business opportunity.
I would even leave a kid in there named Kevin just so they could have the experience.
100%. I redact that though. I did not see the inside. Didn't realize there was a hoops. Yes, that's a sick house. I
can't believe they ignored the obvious answer in front of them and didn't make this house one giant escape room themed and stacked just like the movie that, again, I'll still say slightly overrated and not one I really feel the need to ever watch around Christmas time here. It was just fine for me. Not a huge Macaulay Culkin fan, but very nice and cool house that could have made Claudia going from not having seen the movies to now throwing flick in there to let us all know she is a real movie head. If you appreciate this flick, that is our show, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.